We're proud to finally launch our R35 GTR turbo blankets. These are available both in carbon fibre and titanium like you see here. They both perform exactly the same, it's just the final skin that's different. Today I'm going to be running through what's in the packet as well as how to fit them. In the packet you'll receive the correct number of springs. This is what holds the turbo blanket in place. You'll also find there's a product guide. Make sure you read this cover to cover because there might be some do's and don'ts that you're not aware of. Okay, so let's jump into the first step. You'll notice that I'm fitting these on the bench and not in a car. This is purely to show you how the blanket wraps around the turbo. Okay, so starting with the right hand side here, select the blanket that matches that. You can see the long manifold portion here matches up with the headers. And we've got an anchor point at the bottom there, anchor point there, and one at the top and the bottom of the manifold portion. We're going to do this one last. First, we're going to fit the springs to the anchor point here. We always start with the hardest to reach first. So we're going to have two of those springs, clip on there just like this. Once you've got those in position, you're going to feed that under the actuator arm and then around the rest of the turbine housing. Just slide that through until the cutout lines up with the actuator and bolt holes. Make sure not to catch the turbo blanket on anything at this phase. There we go, just like that. Okay, so this bit's a little bit fiddly. One of those springs that you fitted earlier, we're going to feed through here onto the anchor point just here. I'm going to use a spring puller tool or a pick, but you can use a pair of pliers. Now we're going to repeat the same process for the other side of the turbine housing. I'm going to turn the turbo around so you can see that. Great, so when you get to this stage, you just need to make sure everything's lining up correctly. Make sure the blanket isn't in the way of any bolt holes and it's sat nicely around the oil drain. Don't be afraid to manipulate the blanket to get the finish you need. Now we're going to move on to the final anchor point and spring on this turbo, which is located just here and on the underside. Make sure the blanket is sitting nicely, and then we're going to fit the spring to the underside and then use your spring puller tool or your pliers to reach through the manifold and pull that through. So once that final spring's in place, this turbo is done. Just manipulate the blanket just so that it's sitting nice and there's no creases, it's not snagging on anything. Now we're going to move on to the other turbo. So the left hand side is basically the same process. You can see the header portion is just a little bit shorter, but the blanket looks very similar. You've got the same amount of anchor points, one on the bottom and top there. You've got one on each side and one on the bottom there. Same process, we're going to fit the springs, pass it through around the turbine housing, fit the anchor points and the springs to tighten that up, and lastly the manifold one, and then we're done. I'm going to run through that quickly now. Feed that under the actuator arm. Make sure that sits nicely around the bolt hole and the actuator arm there. Slide that underneath around the turbine housing. Make sure there's enough clearance on the core of the turbo and sit that roughly in place. And then you're going to feed the springs through again through the bottom there, out to the anchor point here, and then under the flange to this anchor point here. Now the spring around the other side. Okay, as before, we just need to manipulate the blanket so it looks nice and tidy and it's not getting in the way of the turbo core, the oil lines, the wastegate workings or anything like that. And now we're going to move on to the manifold anchor points which are just found over this side. So now we're going to work from this anchor point here, fit the spring to that one first. And it's going to tuck just underneath here. Use your spring puller tool or pair of pliers, just grab that and pull it through and fasten it to the other side. So that's it, your GTR now has turbo blankets to protect against massive heat transfer from the hottest parts of your engine bay, your manifold and your turbos. These are now available at funkmotorsport.com.